And we turn our attention to Sudan. Following a new 7-day ceasefire, the residents are still reporting sporadic airstrikes and artillery fire. This is across the capital city of Khartoum, or capital city of Sudan, and that is in Khartoum. The violence has left many people in desperate need of water, food, medicine and other staples. To speak to us more now on the conflict and what perhaps the African Union, including the region, are doing to try and silence the guns in Sudan, we speak to the president of the Sudanese community in Gauteng, Khalid Dahab. Mr. Dahab, thank you very much for your time. Let's begin with the situation in Sudan. My sense is that you have your ear to the ground. What's the situation there, as we are told there is sporadic violence or gunfire still being heard?
Thank you very much for having me, and it is very unfortunate, but since the truce has come into effect 2 days ago, unfortunately both sides have been violating it. As you correctly say, there is still sporadic gunfire. Yesterday there was a military aircraft that was shooting at targets in Omdurman to the west of the capital, and that plane was actually brought down by the rapid support forces, and that is just an example of what is being going on. It is very unfortunate, and it's the civilians who are suffering and who are at the forefront of the casualties, and they are the ones who are paying the price for this war.
Well, let's talk about the plight of the ordinary Sudanese people who are right in the middle of this. We know that these 7-day ceasefire, they are meant to allow for supplies of very important material, whether it be food, medicine, for it to be delivered to the people who are in desperate need of it. Your sense on the ground, how is the situation as it pertains to the people, the livelihoods of people?
Well, first of all, a lot of the people of Khartoum, a lot of the population of Khartoum have actually left the city. Many of them have gone to their relatives in the villages, in the provincial towns and so on. And also many of them have even crossed the border into neighboring countries. According to the United Nations figures, up to around the 16th of May, there was close to 1 million people who have been displaced, either internally or externally. And that is a very large number. A lot of people had to leave their homes because their homes are no longer safe or secure for them to stay in. My own sister had to flee her home, and because the house next door was hit by a rocket, and she had to flee the home, and she had to flee the country and go to Egypt. This is that has been the norm in almost every household in Khartoum. The problem is they cannot go out, even if they stay home. They cannot go out because there is shooting, and stray bullets have hit and killed many people in Khartoum. There's about 700 people who have died. There's close to 3,000 people who have been injured in this war since it started a month ago. And one of the problems also, the hazards, is the dead bodies that are all around the streets, be it the soldiers of both warring parties or be it civilians. And people are unable to go and bury these bodies. And this can cause a very serious health hazard. So this truce was also meant for people to be able to bury these dead bodies and clear the streets. It's a very, very sad story.
It's a humanitarian crisis, Mr. Dahab.
It is indeed. It is. It's a huge humanitarian crisis.
I'm sorry to cut in there. I'm sorry to cut in there. Today,
Sure.
Today, as you well know, the continent of Africa is observing, while some will say we're celebrating Africa Day. There are at least, I think, 6, if my maths is correct. There's about 6 African heads of state who have grouped themselves, and they are going to go and talk to the president of Russia and the president of Ukraine to try and end the war there. For me, I'm trying to paint this scenario of a prioritization of that war that is taking place in Ukraine. That's not to say that there isn't human suffering there, but would you have expected the same to happen with the situation in Sudan? Because if people are unable to be buried, I mean, there are corpses on the side of the road that are going off, that are rotting, and they can't be buried. Do you think that the leaders of Africa are prioritizing this war that is taking place in Sudan just as they are prioritizing the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
I don't see any problem in the African leaders trying to mediate in the Ukraine crisis. After all, we all live in the same world. When this war broke out in Sudan, IGAD, which is the sub-regional organization for the Horn of Africa, came into the picture, and 3 heads of state from IGAD were supposed to fly to Sudan to mediate and to try to stop the war. Unfortunately, they could not make it because the airport, the main airport, that is Khartoum International Airport, was one of the first places that were hit. And it became inoperable. There was no place for them to land even, so that they can come in and mediate. So that was shelved. Also, at the moment, the United States and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia are the ones who have mediated this truce. And they are the ones who are trying, excuse me, they are the ones who are trying to reach a permanent ceasefire between the 2 warring parties. From a political standpoint, I think, too many forums to try and resolve one problem is not a good idea. You let that one forum that has already started and is already achieving results to operate and to support it. And the African Union has already done that. They have said that they are supporting the talks that are being held in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia under the mediation efforts of the United States and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So I think I really don't see any problem there. The African Union can come in and is already actually involved or was involved in the political process that was taking place for a transition to civilian rule. And they were involved in that when the war broke out. So I think they have a role to play, a more important role to play in the political process that should follow after this senseless war has stopped.
Final question to you, sir. The war in Sudan, the understanding is that it is between the military, which is the government of the day, and a paramilitary group that I think is a breakaway from the military of the country. Do you suspect that there might be a third hand here or some kind of third force that is driving this war, and what might bring a lasting solution?
Well, it's very difficult to say. you know, in any conflict in the world, there has to be some you know, outside hands in this. But you know, there's nothing that we can see in the current conflict. The conflict is between the government forces, i.e., the Sudan armed forces on the one side, and the Rapid Support Forces, which is a paramilitary force, that until the day the clashes broke out, was actually part of the Sudan armed forces. And you know, each side is accusing the other of attacking it. We don't know the exact story because nobody has been able to investigate that. But it is, in my opinion, it's a struggle for power between two military wings that are now trying to control the country.
Yeah.
And you know, it's the ambitions of the leaders of either side that are, you know, that is probably one of the reasons why this conflict is happening. We as Sudanese people, you know, we have nothing to do with this. We do not want a military government in our country. We are looking for civilian rule. You know, we've been ruled by the military for the past 34 years now.
Sure.
You know, 30 years of Omar al-Bashir, and you know, after the overthrow of Omar al-Bashir, the military is still in place and is not allowing the civilians to come through and rule the country, and for the military to go back to the barracks. They declare that this is what they want to do. They declare that they will allow a transitional government to be in place. But every time we edge closer to that, then there is a coup. And I see this also as a coup, this current conflict. It's also a coup because we were very close to reaching a political settlement that will bring the civilians to rule the country. So, you know, it's difficult. Going back to your original question, it's extremely difficult to say that there are outside forces that are involved in this.
All right. Mr. Khalid Dahab is the president of the Sudanese community here in the province of Gauteng. Thank you very much for your time and indeed putting us in picture there of what is at play in Sudan. Still